going to call the meeting to order. Welcome. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. Our mission is to prepare all of our students to lead lives of joy and purpose as knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate citizens of a global society. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We are always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes an opportunity for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We desire that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. Thank you for attending. I will ask the board secretary to read the legal notices.
As required under the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 1046 et sequentia, adequate notice was given for calling this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, and the Times on November 22nd, 2019, and distributed to the schools and others on the standard distribution list. The board reserved the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. Board Policy 2230, recording devices, requires that we inform those attending that this meeting, that the proceedings are being recorded on video. This meeting is being video recorded and may also be live streamed.
Thank you. We'll now take a roll call.
Beth Barron.
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Here.
Dan Dart.
Here.
Jessica Deutsch.
Here.
Bill Hare.
Here.
Betsy Calver-Baglio. Brian McDonald.
Present.
Gregory Stankiewicz.
Here.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Present.
Peter Katz. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the adoption of minutes for November 19th, 2019. Can I have a motion? Brian, second? Second? Bill, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? All of those in favor of adoption, show of hands, please.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And as for my report tonight, it's a special meeting. We hope we keep it a short one. I just want to say welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. And thank you to our board for, again, another meeting this month. We've spent some time talking about negotiations, and we're looking forward to hearing about the pre-K expansion. And I'm going to turn it right over to you, Steve.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Beth. I have actually two items I want to talk about. Prior to sharing about our preschool expansion application. Oh. I don't know, it's not...
I'll forward it for you.
Okay. I want to take a moment to highlight the work that we have been doing with our staff in the area of equity and inclusion, and enhancing that in our schools and our classrooms, and particularly focusing on some training that is coming next Monday, when we have a half day for professional development. And Annie, as I know you've been instrumental in planning for all of this, please jump in. So if we move first to the next slide. Beth already read the mission. We read that every week, and the focus really is on all students. And that's the essence of equity, is making sure that all of our students achieve their highest potential without barriers and with supports. If we move to the next slide. Our goals and our overarching focus on equity. Kurt, you can advance. So this is my new favorite book, Cornelius Miner's We've Got This. It's Equity, Access, and the Quest to Be Who Our Students Need Us to Be. And this quote on what inclusivity means, I thought, was incredibly powerful. That it's in the context of teaching and learning, it does not simply mean you are allowed to be present here. To be included means we have changed ourselves and our practices to make here a place where you can thrive. And that's really what all of our work in professional development in the area of equity is about changing ourselves, changing our practices so that every single one of our students can thrive. And so how are we going about doing that? If you can advance, Kurt. This is a definition of equity for our district, one in which we welcome and value all individuals for who they are and provide the structures, relationships, and resources they need to achieve their greatest potential. We're looking at individuals and systems and striving to make sure that we come together to support every single one of our kids. And then how are we doing that with equity?
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead. That's fine. So the professional development, we've been doing this over a course of a number of years, and we will continue. Equity it's not the theme of the year. It's not an add-on to the work that our teachers are already doing in the classrooms. It is the work. It's knowing who our kids are and making sure that our curriculum meets them where they are. And so we've spent much of our last year was focused on training in implicit bias, really understanding who we are, our own cultures, and the biases we all bring. That is a continuing through line for reflection as we move forward with this work in the years ahead. But we've added other elements. So this year and last was a strong focus on restorative justice and restorative practice. And restorative practice are a set of strategies that create meaningful relationships among individuals in a classroom, in a school, and within a broader community. Restorative justice happens when individuals may transgress the values or expectations of the community, but you want to have a community to which they want to return. And so those are the daily steps we take to make sure that every child feels welcome in our schools, every family feels welcome. And we've been working a lot on that. We began training last spring with all of our administrators, with our climate and safety teams. We actually had one of our vice principals, assistant principals at the high school go for 4 days of training to be a certified instructor in restorative practice. It was at the International Institute for Restorative Practice in Pennsylvania. Then we began this fall with training for all of our counselors, and all of our school-based equity teams. So one of the fundamental recommendations from the equity audit that Marceline DeBose did for us a year and a half ago was to develop our internal capacity and not to always have to rely on outside consultants to advise us in how we need to grow and change, but to build the capacity at the building level. And so we have equity teams at each building. These are 6, 10, 12 teachers who are committed to this work. And we've been training them throughout the past couple of years, but certainly 1 day this summer and then 2 days this fall, training with Marceline. And what I really wanted to highlight for our board and our community is the work that's going to be happening next Monday. So we have an early release day, and it's an opportunity for our teachers to come together for their professional work and growth. And the equity teams have planned days for their colleagues focused on equity and inclusion. And if we met today as an administrative team, and we heard the diversity of activities that are planned at each of our schools, but if there is a theme that runs through it, it's really about the stories of our children. When we think about the design thinking model, you start with the end users. What is their experience? And then you build from there. And so we need to hear what our students have to tell us. And one of the things that we discovered in our work with our own professional development and equity is that it's easier to understand the theory and to intellectualize about the need for equity. It's also really important that we have a sense of the heart and that we feel the needs that our kids have. And so we are doing that in a number of ways. At the high school, they're actually bringing in panels of students to talk about their experience. They're looking at actual case studies. At the middle school, they're using videos of our own students talking to teachers. At the elementary schools, they have used focus groups where they've gathered data from students. They've used surveys to gather data from students. And so essentially it's the voices of our kids talking to our teachers and helping them really frame how they want to make a difference in their classrooms and in the culture of the school. So we're excited about that work and look forward to reporting more to the board and to the community as we move forward in this, because this is work that will continue for years to come. Annie, I know you've been instrumental in doing all this planning. Is there anything that you want to add?
I think, well, Steve, you mentioned they have really taken to heart getting to know individual students. So whether it was through surveys, whether it was interviewing children, the teachers have really embraced looking at children beyond their academic selves and really getting to hear their stories and know where they came from and listening to families. So this is actually a wonderful opportunity for each of the schools to take charge of the direction they're going within the school around their issues of equity. I think the buy-in that we've had this year has been much greater than we've had in the past, although all the learning of the last few years has really built to this point. And I think we're in just a really good place right now with what we're doing.
We started the convocation with a full staff. We began the year with a video of our kids talking to teachers about what they wanted them to know about them. We begin every admin team meeting with stories of our students and how we're supporting them together, which is our theme. The other piece of this, the culturally responsive teaching, that has multiple components to it. Part of it is understanding ourselves and our own implicit bias, but that's one element of one component. If you click to the other slide, you'll recognize these as part of the superintendent's goals with a focus on these 5 components of what it means to be a culturally responsive teacher, where it's understanding the impact of cultural diversity, where it's actually looking at the demographic inequities as we did with our examination of achievement data, but it's also the teachers looking at that in their classrooms, just looking at the formative data that they get on a regular basis and from their assessments of kids, building relationships with parents and with the community, really adapting our curriculum, bending our curriculum to meet kids where they are and recognizing their different cultures and perspectives, and making sure that our curriculum doesn't have a single dominant narrative, but that we're looking at multiple narratives and perspectives, and then ongoing self-reflection about our own cultural competence. So those are the components that we're focused on. Lots of good work to be done, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what happens next Monday. All right, so on the agenda tonight is the board's review and approval of our preschool expansion grant. And the preschool falls right into line with our focus on equity and our commitment to closing the opportunity gap for our students. And you click to the next slide. The research is really clear on this point, that a preschool experience is one, high-quality preschool experience is one that does help to close the achievement gap and to combat poverty. So we've cited a number of sources at the bottom here, but when students are engaged in high-quality preschool, they experience these sorts of benefits: higher scores on standardized tests, graduation at higher rates, less retention, less classification for special education services, and higher incomes. In New Zealand, they talk about 10 book children and 1,000 book children, the number of books to which students have been exposed before they start kindergarten. And in Princeton, it may be 10 book children and 10,000 book children. And it's not just books, it's all the experiences. It's the vocabulary, the museums, the cultural experiences. And so preschool is one way that we help to level that playing field and give more books, so to speak, to our 3- and 4-year-olds, so that we're closing that achievement gap, that opportunity gap before our students even begin. And so we've been very focused on this opportunity to expand our preschool offerings and to provide free preschool particularly for those families who may be less resourced. So if you click to the next slide, this is what we currently have and what we're proposing for next year in terms of our preschool. But it's important that we sort of step back 1 year prior. Last year, we did not have state aid for our preschool. We still had 3 special education preschools for our students with special needs, and we had 2 general ed preschools. And they had capacity for 20 students each, so we were serving about 40 students last year. And then when we applied and received the preschool application aid from the state, we move into the current year where we still maintain the 3 special ed classes, but the state aid was really focused on providing free preschool in the general ed setting. And so we were able to increase from 2 to 4 classes. The cap of the students that the state outlines is 15 students per class. So we went from, we have 60 spaces currently. So we went from 40 to 60. We have 3 of those preschools are in district. 1, we are very grateful to be partnering with the YWCA. They have one of our preschools at this point. They're all using the same curriculum, receive the same training. We're serving 60 students, 32 of whom qualify for free or reduced lunch. And then you see the state aid number of around $770,000. So that's supporting our efforts with the preschool, the general ed preschool. What we're looking to do next year is increase our preschools from 4 to 5, our general ed preschools from 4 to 5. 2 would remain in district. We have 3 at the YWCA, so more with our partner school. For a total of 5, it would serve 75 students, and we would have potentially 61 spots, or about 80% of the spots would be available for students on free and reduced lunch. And then you see the additional amount for state aid. It's just over $1 million. So that's what's outlined in the application that's on the agenda tonight. The board received some advanced documentation that kind of provided a more detailed budget. But Andy and I are happy to answer any questions.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure.
The 60 students for the current year, does that include the students is that just for the general ed classes that are 60 students? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we have the preschool disabled classes or the special needs classes have, I think, a 12 student maximum, so there's 36 students that are served in those classes.
Okay, thank you.
What will this look like in 3 years or 5 years? Microphone? Oh, I'm sorry. What will this look like in 3 years or 5 years?
I don't know, but we are investigating that. So we have reached out to all the preschool providers in town, and we're meeting with them. We're looking at what they call the universe of preschoolers whom we can serve. They're about, the universe is around 350 students, I think, 350 to 400 students. And so we are investigating how we can all work together to meet the needs of those students. Some are in private preschools, and where others may benefit from the preschool that we would be offering. And so we'll see after this year whether there is a need for us to expand further.
Steve, 2 questions. How do you feel about, the fact that roughly half of the existing students qualify for free and reduced lunches, so 50-50 roughly, and if the hope is that we can attract more kids who might not have the same opportunities
Right.
of some of the wealthier children of wealthier residents, what efforts can we make to try to ensure that as many of those 61 spots are considered or taken by the students who qualify for free and reduced lunches or are at risk in other ways?
That we're starting tonight. We're having a public announcement about this. I know that Annie in her office is looking carefully at how we advertise and get the word out. So we're going to be meeting with members of the press on Thursday, and we'll be sharing some of this information with them so that we can begin to generate more understanding in the community that this is available. We're working with our parent liaisons to talk to families who they know would benefit from this. So it's a lot of word of mouth. And Annie, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the strategies that you've employed already and that we're looking to put into place.
Well, our liaisons have been very helpful. In fact, one of the reasons we were able to fill the spots that we had this year was because of the outreach our liaisons did to seek out families who would benefit from the program. But we've also started an early childhood advisory council, and on that panel are agencies that serve economically disadvantaged families in the area. I know we have a pediatrician on it. The Princeton Nursery School is part of it. Someone from SHOOP, from PCF. So we have a number of people on it who are helping us with the outreach as well. So the more we can get the information out to families and also encourage them to come and talk with us and get them registered, so that's I think is going to even better help us find the families.
And
that
the
we need to serve.
registration for pre-K and K is February 5th, 6th, and 7th, am I correct?
Correct, yeah. We'll be that'll be general registration for all pre-K and K students, and we're doing as much outreach as we can there, advertising, so people are aware. So that's sort of our roundup for pre-K and K.
Yes.
Annie, do you have anybody from the Princeton Housing Authority on that committee? Because a lot of the low-income folks who live in Princeton live in public housing.
I will find that out for you.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All
I
right.
will find that out.
Great suggestion. Okay.
Could we ramp this up faster? Maybe not for next year, but given the amount of state aid that's available and the obvious benefits of this program, in particular in the area of equity. You know, we're going from 60 to 75, which is wonderful, but could we go from, and it may be too late because we're voting on the application tonight, but could next year we go from 75 to 125 or?
So one of the factors is space. So the YW has only so many rooms, and we have only so many rooms. So that is one factor. And we also want to make sure that we are providing the very best high-quality education. And so there's been an advantage. There's been a little bit of a learning curve for us in dealing with 3-year-olds. And so we have, I think we're comfortable with the pace right now. We have a little more analysis to do. I think the advisory group that Annie's talking about could help us determine whether we can move a bit faster. But there are a number of factors that we will have to look at as a board to consider how much we can expand the following year.
But there's no limitation on state aid, for example, that.
Well, that's another factor too. So the state has to approve our application, and we are one of, I want to say, 28 districts that approximately that received the aid. So it's not an unlimited supply of money.
They are looking at what they consider our universe of potential students. So they would allow us to grow our program until we reach our universe.
Which is 350 to 400.
Correct.
But many of those students are served by other providers.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Is there? That's it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you, Steve. So I think that takes us to our public forum. If any members of the public would like to come and speak, this is not a discussion between the board and the public. We would like to hear what the public has to say. We have a 15-minute maximum time period, and we ask that people can keep their comments to 3 minutes. And we are taking comments on any topic at this point. We have changed our process so that people don't have to wait till the end of the meeting to speak on an open topic. You can speak on agenda or not on agenda if you wish. So, Wendy? And please state your name and address, please.
Certainly. My name is Wendy Longview Drive, is that on? I just want to make a couple comments regarding the current HIB policy that is in place and posted on the internet. I'm not sure if the board is aware that there were new regulations put in place in July of 2018 that were effective as of July 1st, 2018. They were actually discussed back in 2017. Two particular items I'm interested in making sure that get into the policy because I don't see them there. The first of which is the subject matter is recognition of power imbalance. Code section 6A 16-7.7A23. Current regulation, that was back before 2018, there was no reference to imbalance of power in the policy. As of July of 2018, the new regulation requires every board policy to include a statement that bullying is unwanted aggressive behavior that may involve a real or perceived power imbalance. That is not in our current policy. That is 18 months old. Another item that was also passed and is current law is the timeline for parent appeals. Code section 6A 16-7.7A2XL. Previously, there was no requirement to a timeline where a parent involved in a HIB claim had to make a request for hearing. There is now, as of July 2018, 60-day timeline requirement. Is the board aware of these changes, and are these in effect with this board?
Yes,
Yes, okay. And without question and exception?
the board is aware.
Okay. In my particular case, I just want to make sure, let you know, I received notification about the case involving my child on July 11th. I know there was a board hearing that occurred on November 12th. That is way more than 60 days. I would like to know either there had to be a great differential of more than 50 days that the two different families involved were notified, or was that 60-day requirement ignored? And I'm still waiting an answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy, and I'll be happy to talk to you offline about that.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If there aren't any additional people who would like to speak, then I think we are moving on to our next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good evening. I wasn't aware of that I was going to make a statement. I was going to actually ask a set of questions, which I understand that I can't do, so now I have to play Jeopardy and turn this around. My name is Dr. Mark Fiuzinski. I live at 8 Astor Court in Princeton, and I understand from one of the previous slides, it's fantastic that you're expanding the preschool program. I did notice that you are going from 3 in-district classrooms to 2, and then growing at the YWCA. I understand that was a recently created program for which the 770 was obtained, and that program is being transitioned next fall to the YWCA. And just wondering, what is the process of when will the parents find out? What about the kids? This 770, was that really, why was this program that was just started on October 1st? Why is it already being transitioned next year to the YWCA? What happened? Is the board aware of the details? And if it was transitioned because of certain challenges, why were those challenges not addressed with the appropriate resources? Is the board aware of whether the resources were there? I can tell you they were not. Just give me a moment. There's 15 children and their parents. They kind of expected a dual language program. With this transitioning, it's unclear, what will the parents say? What is the incentives for the newly hired staff to stay? And if they then move on, what happens to the children? And so while on the one hand, I think it's fantastic that you're expanding the program, but something didn't work out well, and it would be quite useful for the community to understand and to not repeat these type of situations again for everyone involved, for the parents, children, and the staff that was hired that now does not have a guaranteed spot in the following year. Thank you.
Did you want to speak to that at all?
Well, I mean, I can simply say that we feel we can do an even better job by having the 3 preschools at the Y. It frees up space for us in district, which is critical at a time when we are growing and all of our elementary schools are at capacity. And it also allows for the dual language immersion to teachers to team up in a way that is not currently possible when the schools are separated. Annie, I don't know if you wanted to speak to any of those issues.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Those are the 2 reasons we had for moving it. There was space consideration, and then we know we can do a better job if we have 2 DLI pre-Ks together, which we wouldn't be able to do at CP for another year. So by putting a 3- and a 4-year-old class at the Y, both DLI, we can do a better job of that type of education. So that's the first thing. As far as letting parents know, we are prepared, and we do have a letter to go out to the parents of the children in that class. We wanted to wait until after this proposal was accepted by the board. If it weren't by some chance, then it would be a moot point. So we didn't want to alarm or alert anyone too soon. So, but our current 3-year-olds who are in the program, they would then go to a 4-year-old program at the Y. Our 4-year-olds in the program will be at their home school for kindergarten next year.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further comment, I think we move on to item H, which is the board communication guidelines. And I think we already accepted these at a previous meeting, but there had been some confusion or misunderstanding about one of the lines, and I think we had a proposal to change some of the language. Jess, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, yeah. I think that we had introduced this really as kind of just a procedural clarification of what would be best practice in terms of how we would communicate with each other and the community. And I think almost immediately after that meeting, there was a sense that perhaps the language had unintentionally made things confusing and introduced unintended consequences, I guess. And so I think the simplest thing we'd like to propose is, or I would propose that we just eliminate the sentence that was uncomfortable and misperceived. And I think the revised document is in our board docs now. And so the section on board community communications, the first item would just begin, information shared by board members will be accurate and intended for the public.
Thank you. Michelle?
I'm unclear as to what the unintended consequence was. If somebody could shed some light on that for me, it would be helpful.
Sure. I think that the sentence that related to serving as ambassadors was perceived to be somehow suggesting that we wouldn't be debating, and we wouldn't that we were somehow surrendering our independent thought or freedom of speech. And I for one, never imagined that was on the table. I think we were talking about how can we communicate clearly with each other and join with the community in sharing the information that we can appropriately share as we conduct our role as board members.
Maybe I can throw a little bit in. Saying that board members act as ambassadors of the district is a beautiful statement, and I don't know if anybody can disagree with that. But then when you have a comma and you start saying, but your speech must be within these 2 lines here, that's when you start that's when I start having problems with it. So that was my issue. I didn't mind being an ambassador of the district, representative on the school board of our citizens that elected us, but it's when you start adding in language that describe how you're allowed to phrase stuff, what you're allowed to say, that's when it becomes a problem to me. But as written now, I don't have any problems with it. But I do have a couple questions on this. So,
Wait, before you move
Okay.
on.
Okay.
Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see where it says must. I see it says board members will serve as ambassadors for their district, emphasizing the positive aspects of the district. Not must, not shall, not will, just, hey, when you're talking about the district, try to say something nice. That's what I see. So unless I'm missing something, I don't see where we're compelled to emphasize the positive aspects. It sounds like it's just something that's suggested in our capacity as school board members. We should try to be positive about it.
And I guess maybe that's a problem with it, is two lawyers looking at different ways, and I look at it as a regulation, and dealing with regulations during the day, you can't violate a regulation, so it's either so you have to follow it or it doesn't exist, so it's ambiguous or it's unclear. And I'm used to dealing with regulations that are precisely clear, laws and statutes that are precisely clear. And so when I look at something and go, okay, I have to phrase things in this way, then I have a problem with that. And you're saying, well, you don't have to. So it sounds to me that we're looking at it a different way, so maybe it's not clear enough to be written, and we shouldn't have to have it out there unless we make it really clear. Maybe it should have said, and may emphasize the positive aspects of the difference. Or
I would be more
preferable.
comfortable with or are encouraged to.
Encouraged would be perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But I don't have any problems with it now. But I do have a couple questions about it, though. So what happens in January? Does it get revoted again by the new board? And does this get voted every year? I know it's not going to be an issue for me. But, so that's something to think about. Does it get re-voted on next year? Also,
Can I speak to that first?
Yeah.
My recollection, and anyone else chip in here, but when we worked with the NJSBA and we were given this template, it was just as a way for us to talk to each other about how we communicate. And we were told that it was best practice that boards, every year you have a new group of people around the table. And so was kind of a tool for us to have, I thought, some actually very productive conversations about how we respect the time of our staff and interact with each other. And so I think we got a lot out of it in terms of the conversations we had. And I think that the recommendation was, or the suggestion was, that high-functioning boards often have this type of process, and that they go through it almost every year at reorg, but it's just something you do as part of your conversation. I'm not sure I'm up for that with this board to go through this again. We've had so much confusion, and we've spent so much time on this when we have so many other things to do for the kids. Yeah. So I, personally am not sure that this is worth our time, although I think it's very important that we all see eye to eye on how we communicate with each other.
and the other question I have about it is what force does this have? Again, working with regulations and statutes during the day, and I know if you violate this statute, either you go to jail or something bad happens. If you violate this regulation, same thing. And then there's, like in government agencies, there's policies, which is the way a government agency would operate, and you should follow it, but you don't have to, and you're still okay. So does this fall within what? How would we describe it as? Is there a hammer associated with it, or is it an aspiration? And I like it if it's an aspiration.
Yeah, I'll take a crack. When we went through the multiple training sessions with Jesse Adams, and I think we discussed this at one or two of them, it was in the spirit of best practices. Mm-hmm. And if I recall correctly, he said that a lot of this, which he uses, he's our New Jersey School Board Association representative, and when he works with districts, this is a template that he likes to use, but customizes it for whatever group of people. And he started by saying that many of the things here are restatements of things found in the Code of Ethics that bind us, or that are in our policies, and most of our policies follow the NJSBA model, or are simply acknowledged widely as best practices. And I thought he was clear that this wasn't going to be a policy, that it was a voluntary agreement that just sort of said, we as a group intend to do this. It didn't have any punitive component to it, and it didn't require unanimous approval, and it didn't bind. If some number of people voted for it and some didn't, it didn't bind. It wasn't binding in any way. It was really just directional. And I think that was one of the disconnects. I think some members of the community read it in a more directive way, that it was a policy, that it was restrictive. And I never understood it to be restrictive. The phrase we're taking out, unless we put it back in a modified form, serving as ambassadors, we'll emphasize the positive. I understood that to be, that we can have balanced conversations. So in the aftermath of our presentation of testing data, a couple of that wonderful 59-minute, 47-second presentation, it looked like we hadn't made as much progress in some areas of equity as we would have liked. So a member of the community asked me about that, and I said, there's good news and there's bad news. This is a longstanding and persistent problem, but there's a lot of good work going on. And I was able to share some of the things that Steve has shared with us. And I thought that was kind of consistent with the Code of Ethics and the spirit of this aspirational document, this set of guidelines that we as a group in training said, let's do this voluntarily, just to guide our sort of small community and how we conduct ourselves as a group of 10 people on the board.
Thanks, Brian.
So it's interesting, when I actually said almost exactly what you said when this initially came out, and it had signature lines on it, and it looked like a contract to me. So if we say this is, best efforts, this is aspirational, this is an informal, agreement, then I would have been okay with it when it first came out. And then, it looked more contractual in nature to me. I think it's an improvement with that line taken out. And I go to 2 schools for PTO meetings, JW as a representative of the board, and I'm very conservative in my approach and positive because I am an ambassador, and I know the difference between that role and a role as a private citizen. So I don't have any problems with that generally. On the other hand, I campaigned on openness and transparency. I believe in diversity, and I think as a community, it's one of the things that makes us great. As a school district, it makes us great. And I believe strongly in all types of diversity. And so diversity of opinion, diversity of thought is something that we should embrace. And I think as a management style, we should be a little bit less autocratic, and we should look to build consensus. And in my business experience, it was about getting buy-in. You get buy-in for all the stakeholder groups. And once you get buy-in, you were basically good to go. So, for those reasons, and there's some vagueness to it about, deliberative documents and things like that, for those reasons, I'm not sure if we're voting on it again, although I agree with you, too much time has been wasted on it. Though an improvement, I'm still voting no.
Okay. Is there any other comments, or you want to come in?
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually thank my fellow board members. I went back through the records, and we actually started working on this document back in January. And I think for myself, personally speaking, it was an educational experience in terms of what the rules are for the board members and for the public and for the staff. And I'd like to sort of emphasize that educational component of it. And for any of the people watching this tonight, the document is available. It's public. Also, our bylaws are available in public as well. And so this is a voluntary agreement that reflects the bylaws that bind us, along with the state statutes that we swear to uphold. And we'll be doing that, or the new board will be doing that in January again. And I urge the public to listen very carefully, because each board member in January will be asked to read one of those components in the state ethics law. And that's really important, because that really is what binds us. So in my mind, this agreement is just a way of highlighting what we operate under, but also the aspirational component. It's a way of talking about how we can communicate better with each other, respect the community, and respect our staff. And so that's what I think was really drew me. And as much time as we spent on this, for me, it was an educational experience, and I think it was one that was worth doing.
Thanks, Greg. Anyone else have anything?
So I know you always say we have a lot to do, and we do, but communication is a big part of who we are and what we do. And if we didn't spend the time trying to figure out how to communicate, we wouldn't get anything else done. The rest of it is beautiful. Yeah, be nice, this and that, tell this one. But it's this communication part that just doesn't work for me. On the fifth one, where it says, directed through the chain of command, well, then we have to have a chain of command with our principals that really works, and that they are reporting what they hear. So, because I've heard from people, yes, I told so-and-so and it didn't go anywhere. So, you can look at this, but we're not in control of that part. Plus, it also says school-sponsored events are open to the public, will be organized by the staff. Like, if I approve this, am I the one telling the staff they properly need to notice it 1 week? So I'm good with everything above board communication. And Michelle, I really felt like it was telling me I could only say things that were positive. Like, that's how I read it. That's how it hit me. And I was like, it just makes it seem like I'm not saying anything that I really believe or feel. And even the next line, information shared by board members will be accurate and intended for the public. I just feel this is really putting, blocks on what we can say and do. It's just hard. I'm not going to say incorrect things, but I also feel this is just, to me, it's too much Big Brother for me. And I just, I'm happy with everything above, because, yes, we should be respectful to everybody. And if I've been unrespectful, please let me know. But the rest of this part, I can't, for me, I'm not approving it. If we're voting again, I don't know where we are.
Okay, I think that this is a good conversation to have, because I do think it emphasizes the fact that we all read things differently, and members of the public, see what we do in different ways through their own lenses, and I think it's really important. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I think it's helpful. And I have to say, I have learned a lot through the whole process as well this year, talking this through with my fellow board members and kind of hearing what the public had to say. So I think this is all positive, and I appreciate everyone's comments. So I think, are we ready to move to a vote on this? Shall we call the question? Do we want to approve this with the line taken out, or we want to amend it, or we just want to move on? What does the board want to do?
So Jess has proposed an amendment, removing the allegedly offensive statement.
Confusing.
Confusing. So she can, if she's interested in moving it forward, she can move, somebody can second it, we can call a question and keep it moving.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'm happy to put it forward in its revised form as a guideline.
And with the caveat, Bill, that in January there'll be a new board, and we can talk again about how we communicate with that new group.
And I'm happy to second it, because I don't feel like it's restricting my speech as a board member, and it's accomplished what the language I wanted out is out. So I like this as an aspirational document.
Thank you, Bill.
So I'm seconded.
Okay. Any additional discussion? And if not, all those in favor of the motion made to drop the confusing sentence, show of hands.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, So we are moving on now to some of our more substantive items. Item I, personnel, and these are then consent items, and so we will move through them relatively quickly unless there's any questions. So the first matter being the suspension of a staff member. Item 2, appointments of student teachers. That brings us to item J1, preschool expansion aid, 1-year preschool program plan. And this is the resolution that, with respect to the grant proposal that Steve explained earlier. Again, it's a consent item. Is there any discussion? None. We'll move on. Item K1, travel and related expenses. No discussion. We come to the consent vote. We'll do a roll call.
We have a motion. Bill, and second
second.
Greg. Okay. Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Brownfeld,
Yes.
Daniel Dart,
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch, Bill Hare, Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Greg Stankiewicz,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes.
Thank you. That brings us to our second public comment period. Does anyone have anything they would like to add? If there's no public comment? Yes.
Hi, Mary Clerman, Harris Road. I'd just like to say that the confusion with the public is, everybody wonders why you had to do this. What was the incident? What was the issue? What was the problem that had to be addressed? Because it seems that it's all really addressed in your policy to begin with anyway. So if you could clarify that, that would probably resolve a lot of people's questions. Thank you.
Mary. Okay. Shall I speak to that? I think we did it as part of, I think I already did, Mary. I think we talked about the fact that this came out of a board retreat, which was initiated by our New Jersey School Board rep as a good practice, best practice of boards, and we benefited from the process. And as part of that, it had been recommended that we either make it a policy, and I think we decided we didn't want to make it a policy, it reflects our existing policies, or that we just affirm it at a board meeting together around the table, and that's all we did. So,
I thought one thing.
Sure.
I mean, part of it is this aspirational document is a lot more than the communication. It's when we get our packets to review before a school board meeting. It's when we ask Matt to put something on the agenda and we try not to do it in the middle of the meeting. So a lot of it was that, just how to run things better so that,
yes,
we're not, guess what, Steve, guess what I found out today and did you know about it stuff.
right.
So a lot of it was that, so, which was
And I
really
will
just,
say,
yeah.
as being asked of 1 of 10 to be your president, I'm kind of the traffic director, and I found the conversation really helpful because we all agreed how we wanted me to direct the traffic, and we all forget once in a while. I'll admit myself, I get an idea and I want to just tell him immediately, and then I think, oh, if we all 10 of us tell him immediately, what happens? Steve gets nothing done. So we agreed kind of how we wanted to do this, and I think it's worked for us pretty well, and given us something to kind of aspire to be more efficient and more effective. So I think there was some benefit to that. So thank you, Bill.
I think rather than emerging out of a problem, it was really part of a education, board self-education about process and about role and about valuing communication and differences of opinion and how we could work together most effectively. So I think it was really more about process and continuing to educate ourselves, which I think we continue to do as a board.
Thank you. If there's no further comment, I think, do we have any closing comments? Other than to be thankful for another short meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Brian and Dan second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.